Hello, friend. It's late, or maybe it's not quite late yet, but you're winding down, and that's really all that matters right now. Wherever you're listening from, bed, a couch, somewhere warm and dim, you don't need to do anything for the next hour except let your eyes close whenever they want to. There's nothing to follow closely tonight, nothing to remember, nothing to figure out. You can drift in and out as you like, and you won't have missed a thing that matters. Tonight, let's spend a little time with an old book. It's called The Richest Man in Babylon, written a long time ago now, almost 100 years, by a man named George Clason. And it's not really a finance book, not the way we think of finance books today. There are no spreadsheets in it, no charts, no urgent voice telling you that you're behind and need to catch up. It's just stories, gentle old stories, set in an ancient city about people learning, slowly, patiently, how to hold on to a little bit of gold and let it grow. You don't have to take notes. You don't have to remember the names. Just let the voice carry you, the way you'd let a river carry a leaf downstream. No effort at all, just drifting where the current wants to take it. If you drift off before we're through, that's fine. That's actually the whole point of tonight. So let's begin slowly. Let's go back, a very long way back, to a city built on the banks of a wide, slow river, where the walls were thick and pale in the moonlight, where the streets, by day, were golden with dust and sunlight, and where a few ordinary people once wondered, quietly, why some among them seemed to have so much, while most had so little. Let's go to Babylon. There's no hurry to get there. We have all the time we need. You can picture it if you like, or you can just let the words wash over you without picturing anything at all. Either way is fine. A city of sun-baked brick, walls thick enough for 2 chariots to pass along their top, a river moving slow and wide beneath a sky just beginning to turn the color of dusk. Somewhere in that city, a long time ago, ordinary people finished their ordinary work, the way you finished yours today, and made their way home along dusty streets, tired in the same familiar way people have always been tired at the end of a long day. That's where we're going tonight. Nowhere urgent, nowhere that needs your full attention. Just an old, warm, unhurried place, and a few old, warm, unhurried stories waiting there for us. Take a slow breath if you'd like to, in and then out, however long that takes you. There's no pace to keep up with tonight, and nowhere else you need to be. Just here, just this voice, just the old city waiting patiently up ahead, exactly where it's always been. George Clason wrote these stories in the 1920s, originally as small pamphlets, little booklets, really nothing grand about them at first. Banks and insurance companies used to hand them out to their customers, actually, as a kind of gift. Little folded stories meant to teach ordinary working people some simple truths about money, wrapped up in old parables, so the lessons would be easy to remember and pleasant to sit with, rather than dry and clinical the way most financial advice tends to be. Clason wasn't a banker himself, which is maybe part of why the stories feel so unhurried. He was a mapmaker for a while and later a publisher, and it seems he had a real fondness for history, for old cities, old customs, old settled ways of doing things. He spent a long time studying ancient Babylon before he ever wrote a word of story. Its laws, its irrigation, its markets, the way its economy actually functioned, all those centuries ago. And only once he understood that world quietly, from the inside, did he begin to let these characters walk through it. And maybe that patience is part of why the book has lasted as long as it has. It doesn't try to be clever. It doesn't chase trends or promise anything sudden. It simply says again and again, in one gentle form after another, people have been dealing with money and worrying about money and hoping for a little more steadiness around money for thousands and thousands of years. And it turns out the answers haven't changed all that much in all that time. Not really. People come back to this book, generation after generation, for a few quiet reasons. Partly because it's short and gentle and doesn't demand very much of the reader. You could read the whole thing in an evening, and many people have. Partly because the stories themselves are simply nice to sit inside of. There's no real anxiety running through them, even in the parts where the characters are struggling. The tone stays even almost fable-like, the way a bedtime story stays calm even when the characters inside it are lost in a forest for a while, because you already sense somehow that they'll find. And partly, I think, people return to it because it never asks the reader to become someone they're not. It doesn't ask you to become a trader or a risk-taker or someone chasing a fortune. It just asks you to notice a few small, quiet habits The kind of thing you could begin tonight in a very small way and barely feel the difference at first. And yet, given enough time and enough patience, those small things add up, slowly, into something that changes the whole shape of a life. So tonight isn't really about becoming rich, not in any hurried or grasping sense. It's more about a kind of steadiness, a kind of patience with your own life and your own money, and the slow, unhurried unfolding of both, the way a garden unfolds, or a season, or a long, easy river finding its way, eventually, to the sea. There's a quiet detail about the book that I find rather nice, if you're still awake to hear it. Clason didn't set his lessons in his own time, in the busy 1920s, with its telephones and motor cars and newspapers. He reached much further back than that, all the way to ancient Babylon, on purpose. He wanted his readers to feel that these ideas weren't new or trendy or tied to any one particular moment. He wanted them to feel old, tested, worn smooth by centuries of ordinary hands, the way a stone step gets worn smooth by centuries of ordinary feet climbing it. There's something reassuring in that, I think. These aren't untested ideas. They're some of the oldest, most patient ideas there are. Let yourself settle in a little more now. The book opens with two old friends in Babylon, a chariot builder named Bansur and a musician named Kabi. It's evening, and Bansur is sitting outside his home, on a low stone wall, feeling discouraged in the particular, tired way a person feels discouraged after a long day of work that never quite seems to add up to anything. He spent his whole life building chariots. Good, sturdy chariots, the kind a person could be proud of. And yet somehow, no matter how much he earns, his purse stays thin, flat, almost weightless in his hand. Kabi comes walking by with his lyre, on his way, it seems, to play at some noble's feast, and he stops to greet his old friend. And in that easy, familiar way old friends have with each other, Bansur admits how he's feeling, not dramatically, just quietly, the way you might admit something to someone you trust completely. And Kabi, a little surprised at first, admits that he feels almost exactly the same. Neither of them can quite explain it. They work, they earn a fair wage for their skill, and somehow there's just never quite enough left over at the end of any given week to feel truly at ease. Bansur tells Kabi about a dream he had the night before. A dream where his purse was heavy and full, jingling pleasantly at his side, and in the dream he felt, for once, entirely at ease. And then he woke and reached for his real purse, and found it just as thin and light as it had always been, and the disappointment of that, small as it sounds, settled over him for the whole day afterward. It's the kind of small, private disappointment most of us know quietly, in our own way, waking from some small, hopeful dream, back into the same familiar, unchanged morning. They sit together for a while on that low wall, watching the city move past them in the fading light, merchants closing their stalls for the evening, camel trains moving slowly toward the gates, servants carrying baskets home from market, the whole unhurried business of an ordinary evening in an ordinary city. And somewhere in that quiet, tired conversation between two old friends, something small happens. One of them remembers a man they both knew, growing up, a man named Arkad, a boy from their own neighborhood once, no different from either of them, who has become, over the years, the richest man in all of Babylon. So rich, it's said, that the king himself calls on him for advice about the treasury. And Bansur and Kabi wonder, gently, without much real hope at first, whether Arkad might simply tell them his secret, if they were to ask. That's really the seed of the whole book. Not envy and not urgency. Just two tired men, sitting on a wall in the evening light, wondering if there might be a kinder, steadier way to live with money than the way they had been living. And after a little while, they decide that since it costs nothing at all to ask a question, they may as well go and ask it. There's something worth sitting with in that, if you'd like to sit with it for a moment. So many of us carry around a low, quiet tiredness about money. Not a crisis exactly, nothing dramatic, just a persistent hum of not quite enough, running underneath the days. And most of us rarely stop to ask whether there might be a different way to hold it. We just keep doing what we've always done, hoping, vaguely, that it changes on its own, given enough time. Bansur and Kabi decided to ask instead. That's all it took in the end. Just the willingness to ask. And when they find Arkad, he doesn't turn them away, or make them feel small for asking. He remembers, quite clearly, being poor himself once. A young scribe, copying laws onto clay tablets for a modest wage, barely able to afford his own meals. He tells them this plainly, gently, before he tells them anything else at all. He's not lecturing from some high, distant place. He started once exactly where they were standing. So let's slow down here and settle into the story Arkad tells them, because it's really the quiet heart of everything that follows in this book. There's a small piece of the story worth knowing before we go further about how these particular ideas came to be written down at all. Years after Arkad had become known as the richest man in Babylon, the king himself grew troubled. It seemed to him that only a small handful of people in his city ever seemed to grow wealthy, while most everyone else struggled, no matter how hard they worked, and he wondered whether wealth was simply a secret known to a fortunate few, or whether it was something that could be taught plainly to anyone willing to listen. So the king called Arkad before him and asked him this directly. And Arkad told him simply that wealth could indeed be taught, that the principles were not complicated at all, and that any person of ordinary intelligence, willing to be patient and steady, could learn them. And so the king asked Arkad to gather 100 men in the city and teach them what he knew, so that they, in turn, might teach others, and slowly, over time, the whole city might grow a little more prosperous, a little more at ease. And that's the room this story actually unfolds in. An old temple hall, a small circle of students sitting on the floor before an old man who once had nothing at all, listening as he tells them, plainly and without any hurry, exactly how he came to have everything he now has. There's nothing dramatic about the room itself. Just an old teacher, a patient audience, and an evening slowly settling in around them, the way an evening is settling in around you, now, wherever you happen to be listening from. The first idea the book offers is this: start thy purse to fattening. It's an old, formal way of saying something very simple. Pay yourself first, before the bills, before anything you want to buy. Set a small portion of what you earn aside for yourself, before it ever has the chance to slip away into anything else. Arkad tells the story of how he first learned this many years before, when he was young and poor. A wealthy old moneylender in the city, a man named Algamish, hired him one day to do some copying work. Long hours, bent over clay tablets by lamplight. And while Arkad worked, he found the courage, one evening, to ask the old man quite plainly how a person actually becomes wealthy. And Algamish, who could easily have brushed the question aside, chose instead to answer it. And what he told him, Arkad never forgot for the rest of his life. He said that every time Arkad received 10 coins into his purse, he should only ever spend 9 of them. Just 9. The 10th coin was to be kept, set aside, left untouched no matter what. That's the whole idea, really, at the very center of it. 9 parts out of 10 to live on exactly as before, and 1 part quietly kept back for yourself. It sounds almost too small a thing to matter, doesn't it? 1 coin out of every 10. And Arkad felt exactly that at first, that it was too small a change to make any real difference in his life. But he tried it anyway because, as he says, he had nothing at all to lose by trying. He took his very first coin and set it aside and found, to his own quiet surprise, that he barely missed it. He still managed. He still got by day to day much as he always had. Life didn't suddenly become harder or leaner or more difficult to bear. Arkad stayed with Algamish a long while after that first piece of So he suggests something simple, something almost anyone could try. Sit down quietly and write out what you truly need to spend to live your life well, the real essentials, not the endless list of wants, and let that honest figure become your budget for 9/10 of your earnings, with the 10th as always set aside first and left alone. There's no shame anywhere in this part of the story. No scolding tone, no finger pointed at anyone. Arkad's own students grumble a little at first, the way almost anyone might, faced with the idea of looking too closely at their own spending. But when they actually try it, when they sit down and honestly separate what they truly need from what they simply want out of habit or comparison or a passing mood, they find, almost every single time, that there was more room in their budget than they had ever assumed. Room enough, quite comfortably, for that 1 coin in 10, and still enough left over to live well. It's less about restriction, really, and more about attention. Just looking honestly, without judgment, at where the money actually flows day by day. Most of us never quite do that. We let it flow, and we feel some vague unease about it, somewhere in the back of the mind, without ever really pausing to look closely. Arkad simply suggests gently, look, without panic, without guilt. Just look clearly at what's really there. He tells his students gently that if they simply write down every single thing they truly need, a fair measure of food, a place to live, clothing enough to be decent and warm, and a small, modest amount for simple pleasures, the kind that make an ordinary life feel worth living, not extravagant, just warm, and then compare that honest list against 9/10 of what they earn, they will very often find, to their own quiet surprise, that the two numbers fit together more comfortably than they'd feared. The wanting, it turns out, was always larger than the needing. It nearly always is, for nearly everyone, when they finally sit down and look closely. There's a quiet comfort in that, if you sit with it for a moment. So much of what feels overwhelming about money isn't really about the money itself. It's about not looking. The looking away is what makes it feel heavy. And once a person looks gently, honestly, without any harshness toward themselves, the weight tends to lift, at least a little, almost every time. Arkad offers his students a small, homely picture to help the idea settle. He asks them to imagine a basket, the kind an egg merchant might carry, and to imagine putting 10 eggs into it each morning, and taking 9 back out each evening for the household's needs. What happens to that basket, he asks, over time? And of course, slowly, patiently, it fills. Not because of any single large deposit, just because each day 1 egg more goes in than comes back out. It's such a plain, unremarkable little image, and maybe that's exactly why it stays with people the way it does. A basket filling slowly, 1 egg at a time, entirely on its own, simply because of a small daily difference kept up without fail. Your own purse, Arkad tells them, can fill in exactly the same quiet way, if you let it. Control thy expenditures, not to shrink your life or make it smaller and more anxious, just to see it clearly, honestly, the way it actually is. That's really all this idea is asking of anyone. Nothing more, just a basket filling slowly, 1 small day at a time. The third idea moves a little further along now, into something Arkad calls make thy gold multiply. This is where that 10th coin, the one that's been quietly set aside all this time, stops simply sitting still in the dark of the purse, and begins, instead, to go to work. Arkad describes it something like this: gold sitting in a purse, he says, brings a certain satisfaction just to look at and to hold and to feel its weight in the palm of your hand. But it earns nothing at all while it sits there, unmoving. It's only once that gold is lent out or invested carefully and wisely that it begins to bring more gold home with it, the way a good and faithful worker returns each evening with something to show for the day. He talks about how even a fairly small sum, lent out at a fair and reasonable rate, and allowed simply to grow, with its earnings added quietly back into itself year after unremarkable year, becomes something genuinely surprising over time. Not because of any single clever move, and not because of any sudden stroke of brilliance, just because of patience and the slow, steady passing of years, doing their quiet work in the background, largely unnoticed, while life goes on around it. He gives a small example: an old farmer setting aside 10 pieces of silver for his son, to be lent out wisely, with the earnings always folded back into the sum, rather than spent as they arrived. And over many, many years, that quiet, unremarkable arrangement grew into something far larger than the farmer, or even his son, could ever have guessed at from those first 10 modest coins. There's a real gentleness to this idea, if you let yourself notice it, easy to miss if you rush past it too quickly. It isn't asking you to be bold, or clever, or daring. It isn't asking you to gamble, or to chase some exciting scheme that promises quick and easy returns. It's really only asking you to let time do what time already knows how to do. Quietly, unglamorously, adding a little more onto a little more, again and again, without needing your constant attention or your worry or your daily involvement at all. Money, once it's been set aside and put gently to work, becomes something almost alive in its own quiet way. It goes out, it earns a little, it comes home slightly larger than before, and then it goes out again and comes home again larger still. Arcot describes gold like this as a kind of faithful worker, laboring for you tirelessly day and night, not because he means it unkindly toward the gold, but because he wants his students to understand something important, that once your money is quietly at work, you no longer have to work quite so hard yourself, every single hour of every single day, just to earn every single coin by hand. Make thy gold multiply. Let it go out quietly to work while you rest, while you sleep, while your attention is somewhere else entirely. That's really the whole idea. Nothing urgent about it at all. Just patience, doing exactly what patience always does, given enough time. Think, if you like, of a stream feeding a small pond, somewhere quiet and out of the way. Nobody watches a pond every hour of the day to see it slowly rise. Nobody needs to. The stream just keeps arriving, small and steady, and the pond simply, gradually, becomes fuller than it was, and nobody has to strain or hurry to make that happen. It happens on its own, given time, and given a source that keeps quietly, faithfully arriving. Your saved coin, put gently to work, is very much like that stream. You don't have to watch it every hour. You don't have to worry over it or check on it constantly, or make anything happen through sheer effort. You simply let it flow, and let the pond, in its own unhurried way, fill. Make thy gold multiply. Let it flow quietly, the way a stream flows into a still pond, asking nothing of you but a little patience, and a little trust in something that's been true for a very long time. There's a gentle little tale tucked in here too about luck, about whether some people are simply born fortunate, and others aren't, and whether there's anything to be done about it either way. The people of Babylon, in this part of the story, gather to talk about a golden goddess of good fortune, and wonder aloud why she seems to smile on some, and pass others by entirely. And the wise men of the city, turning the question over slowly, come to a quiet conclusion. They notice that the people luck seems to favor most often are, almost without exception, the very same people who acted first, who set something in motion, however small, rather than waiting patiently for some fortunate thing to arrive on its own. A farmer who plants his field early and tends it steadily tends to have good fortune with his harvest. A merchant who takes his goods to market at the right season, rather than waiting for a more convenient day that never quite comes, tends to have good fortune with his sales. It isn't magic, in other words, and it isn't really about being chosen by some golden statue at all. It's simply that the coin already set aside, the 10th part already kept, waiting quietly and ready, that coin is in a position to be used well, the moment a good and honest opportunity happens to pass by. Luck, this old story suggests, tends to find the people who were already quietly ready for it. You don't need to chase luck tonight, or worry about whether you have enough of it. You only need to keep doing the small, steady thing, and trust that readiness, quietly kept, tends to meet opportunity somewhere along the way in its own good time. The fourth idea is a little more careful now, a little more watchful. Guard thy treasures from loss. Arcot tells his students, quite plainly, that the very first sound principle of investing anything at all is security for the principal. Meaning, simply, that before a person ever thinks about how much something might earn, they ought first to think carefully about whether they might lose what they started with in the first place. He tells a small, quiet story about a young bricklayer, a decent, hard-working man, who came into a little money and was eager, very eager, to make it grow quickly. A friend of his offered him a chance to invest in rare jewels, at what seemed, on the surface, like a wonderful price. And the young bricklayer, without asking anyone wiser than himself, without pausing to check whether the man selling the jewels actually understood jewels at all, handed over his coins in a hurry, and lost every one of them. Arkad's lesson here isn't really about jewels, or bricklayers, or any one particular mistake. It's something quieter than that, and more universal. He tells his students that before they ever lend their money, or invest it in anything, they should study the matter carefully themselves, or seek the honest advice of those who are genuinely wise in that particular kind of business. Not simply people who mean well or people who sound confident, but people who truly understand the risk involved from long experience. Better, he says, to earn a modest, steady return in safety than to risk everything chasing after a larger one that might never arrive at all. It's a kind of gentle caution, really running through this part of the story. Not fear exactly, just care. The same unhurried care you might take crossing a street you don't know especially well, late at night. You don't need to be afraid of the street. You simply look both ways and take your time and cross when it feels right to cross. Guard thy treasures. Move carefully and without hurry. Ask the wise before you leap. Prefer safety over speed almost always. It's such a small, quiet kind of wisdom, tucked into this old story, and yet it saves so many people so much sorrow, so often, across so many lives, in ways they rarely notice until much later. There's another small tale, tucked elsewhere in the book, about the great walls that once surrounded Babylon itself. Tall, thick walls, built long before any of these characters were born, meant to keep the city safe through every siege and every danger that came against it. And the storyteller pauses at one point to make a quiet comparison. He says that just as those old walls stood between the city and whatever danger passed by outside, a little caution, a little foresight, stands between a person's savings and whatever misfortune might otherwise sweep them away. Arkad offers a gentler, more hopeful example too, alongside the bricklayer's mistake, so the lesson doesn't linger too long on loss. He speaks of a shrewd old merchant named Mathan, well known in Babylon for lending money wisely over many years to careful borrowers, always asking first whether the money could genuinely be repaid, always asking what stood behind the request as security, always more interested in a borrower's honest character than in any promise of quick profit. Mathan rarely lost anything at all, not because he was lucky, but simply because he was patient and asked good questions and never let eagerness rush past caution. That's really the quiet balance this whole idea is asking for. Not fear of ever lending or ever investing or ever taking any risk at all. Just the same unhurried care that Mathan brought to every decision, asking a few honest questions first before ever committing what's been so patiently saved. Nobody inside those walls needed to think about them constantly or worry over them day to day. The walls simply stood there, quietly doing their patient work, so that ordinary life could carry on undisturbed within them. That's really all caution is meant to do for your own savings, too. Not to occupy your thoughts constantly, but to stand quietly around what you've gathered, so the rest of your life can carry on undisturbed behind it. The fifth idea turns towards something a little more grounded now, quite literally. Make of thy dwelling a profitable investment. Arkad speaks, in this part of the story, about owning your own home, rather than paying endlessly month after month for someone else's. He points out gently that a family living in a rented place still spends money on shelter, the same as any family does, except that money simply disappears each month, out into someone else's hands with nothing at all left behind afterward to show for it. Whereas if that same money were instead paying, little by little, toward a home of their own, then eventually, after enough patient years, the paying would come to an end, and the home itself would remain solid and settled, belonging entirely to them. There's something almost restful in this particular part of the story, if you let it settle over you. It isn't really about chasing wealth or building something impressive. It's about reducing your own quiet costs of living over time so that more of what you earn can simply stay with you. That same fattening purse from the very beginning of the story, growing a little easier to fill now because there's a little less pulling steadily at it every single month for the rest of your life. He mentions, too, almost in passing, that a family with a garden of their own, a home that is simply, quietly theirs, tends to feel a certain contentment that renting rarely brings with it, a sense of rootedness, of belonging to a place and having that place belong, in turn, to them. There's one more small story worth resting on before we come to a home of one's own, and it's a quieter version of a tale that appears a little later in the book, the story of a man who, for a time, owed more than he could easily pay. It isn't really a story about hardship the way we might tell it tonight. It's more a story about a kind of relief, The man had, for a while, let his debts grow larger than he'd meant them to, the way debts sometimes do, quietly, a little at a time, until one day they simply were what they were. And instead of running from that fact or pretending it wasn't so, he did something rather steady and unremarkable. He sat down and made a plain, honest list of everyone he owed and how much, and he decided calmly that he would set aside a small portion of everything he earned from then on, a little for himself to keep building his own fattening purse, and a little steadily toward each debt, evenly divided, paid down slowly week after week, without drama, without rushing, without despair. Took him a long while. The book doesn't hurry through it, and neither will we. But bit by bit, payment by small payment, the debts grew smaller, the way anything grows smaller when it's chipped away at patiently, evening after evening, for long enough. And what struck him most, by the end of it, wasn't really the money itself. It was how much lighter he felt, carrying an honest, orderly plan instead of a vague, uneasy worry he'd been avoiding looking at directly. There's something worth carrying from that, even loosely, even half asleep. That an honest look at what's owed, however uncomfortable it feels at first, tends to bring relief rather than more distress, once it's actually been looked at. And that even a difficult debt, treated calmly and chipped away at steadily, a little at a time, eventually becomes smaller, and then smaller still, and then one quiet day it's simply gone. A home of your own, something solid, settled, and unmoving beneath you, instead of money passing endlessly through your open hands and out again, month after month, into someone else's keeping, just settling slowly, gently into a place that finally stays. There's something almost geological about this idea, if you let your mind wander toward it. A river, over enough time, carves a bed for itself and settles into it, and stops wandering so restlessly across the land. A home can do something similar for a life. Give it a bed to settle into, a fixed point the rest of the days can arrange themselves quietly around instead of drifting, unanchored, from one temporary place to the next. You don't have to think about any of that tonight, of course. It's just there, in the story, waiting patiently the way a home waits whenever you're ready to think about it. Tonight, you can simply picture it, if you like. A small home somewhere, its garden a little overgrown, its walls warm from the day's sun, entirely, quietly, someone's own. Maybe there's a door that sticks a little in the damp season, the way old doors sometimes do. Maybe there's a favorite chair by a window, worn soft in one particular spot, from years of the same person sitting in the same easy place at the end of the same kind of day. None of it needs to be grand. It just needs to be steady and familiar, and finally, after all that patient paying, entirely paid for. And the last idea now, the one that gathers up all the others quietly at the end, is really about the years still further ahead, what Arcot calls ensuring a future income, and, alongside it, increasing your own ability to earn. He speaks gently about old age in this part of the story, about a time still far off for most of his young students, when a person may no longer be able to work as they once did, with the same strength or the same steady hands. And he speaks about how wise it is to prepare for that quiet season long before it ever arrives. The very same way a careful farmer prepares, in early spring, for a harvest that is still many months away, out of sight, over the horizon, setting a little aside steadily, patiently, so that in those later years, there is something waiting quietly to provide, without anyone needing to worry or scramble, or ask for help they'd rather not have to ask for. And alongside that thought, gently woven into it, he speaks too about growing your own skill slowly across a whole working life, becoming a little more capable, a little more knowledgeable, a little more valuable in your own particular craft, year after unremarkable year. Not out of restlessness and not out of ambition for its own sake, but simply because a person who keeps learning, who keeps quietly sharpening what they already know, tends to find, over time, that opportunity comes to them a little more easily and a little more often across the whole unfolding of a life. Both of these ideas, taken together, point gently toward the very same quiet truth. The future isn't something that simply happens to a person, out of nowhere, all at once. It's something that gets prepared for, slowly, in ordinary days, long before it ever actually arrives. Not through any single grand decision made once and then forgotten, just through small, steady care, repeated quietly again and again, until one day, without quite noticing when it happened, you look up and find that all that small care has become something solid, something real, something waiting for you. Ensure the years ahead, gently, without urgency. Keep growing quietly, in what you know and what you can do. Let the small, steady things you choose to do today become, in their own slow time, the quiet safety of some later day you haven't reached yet, and don't need to think about too hard tonight. There's a quiet story, later in the book, about Arkad's own son, a young man named Nomacer. When Nomacer came of age, Arkad didn't simply hand him a share of his fortune and wish him well. Instead, he gave him a modest sum and a handful of these very same principles, and sent him off to a distant city to make his own way, entirely on his own, so that he might learn to build something himself, rather than simply inherit what his father had already built. It wasn't an unkind thing to do in the telling, more a quiet act of trust, really, in his son's own capability. And Nomacer, the story goes, struggled at first, the way almost anyone does when they're finding their footing in an unfamiliar place. He made a mistake or two, lost a little of what he'd started with, the way most people do when they're first learning anything worth learning. But he remembered what his father had taught him, patiently, and he began again, more carefully this time, keeping his tenth, watching his spending, guarding what he saved. And slowly, over years, in his own unhurried way, he built something solid of his own. Not simply a copy of his father's fortune, but something that was, in the end, entirely his. Before Nomacer left, Arkad is said to have given him something more formal than casual advice. A set of 5 short sayings, almost like a little poem, meant to be carried along and remembered, even in a distant city, even without his father nearby to remind him. They're worth hearing once, slowly, the way Nomacer must have first heard them. Gold comes gladly, and in increasing quantity, to any person who will put by not less than 1/10 of their earnings to create an estate for their own future and that of their family. Gold labors diligently and contentedly for the wise owner who finds for it profitable employment, multiplying, in time, even more than a busy field of crops. Gold clings to the protection of the cautious owner who invests it under the advice of those wise in its handling, but it slips away from those who invest it in businesses or purposes with which they are not familiar. Gold slips away from the person who invests it in ventures they don't fully understand, or that aren't approved by those experienced in its use. And gold flees the person who tries to force it into unwise gains, who follows the alluring advice of tricksters and schemers, or who trusts too fully in their own inexperience. There's a quiet rhythm to hearing them all together like that, almost like a lullaby of its own, if you let it settle over you slowly enough. Not really new information at this point in the evening. Mostly things we've already walked through together, gently, one at a time, just gathered up now into a single small handful of old, worn words, the kind meant to be carried a long way, and remembered, even faintly, even years later, in some distant place. There's something gentle in that story worth carrying quietly into sleep. That these small habits aren't really about any one person's particular luck or particular cleverness. They're patient enough and simple enough to be handed down quietly from one generation to the next, and to work just as steadily the second time, in someone else's hands as they did the first. Arkad tells his students, too, that a wise person also thinks a little about those they leave behind, setting a small, steady provision in place quietly so that even if something unexpected happened, there would still be something waiting, some small cushion of care, for the people who depend on them. It's not a heavy thought the way he tells it. It's a gentle one, more like closing a window before a storm arrives than bracing for disaster. A small, sensible kindness, extended toward a future you can't quite see yet, but can still, in small ways, prepare for. And there's a quiet dignity, too, in the idea of simply getting a little better at your own craft year after year, without any particular fanfare about it. Not chasing promotions or recognition or anything loud. Just the private satisfaction of knowing your own trade a little more deeply this year than you did the year before. That kind of quiet growth tends to take care of itself, given enough time and enough patient attention, the same way everything else in this story tends to take care of itself, given enough time. So that's the shape of it altogether. 7 small habits, really, though we've folded a couple of them gently together tonight to make the walk a little easier. Start the purse fattening. Watch the spending closely and honestly. Let the gold multiply patiently in its own time. Guard it carefully, always. Own a home, if you're able, and let it settle you. And prepare gently, without hurry, for the years still ahead. None of them loud, none of them urgent, Just small, steady, quietly repeatable things, the kind of thing you could begin tonight in the smallest possible way and barely feel the difference for a long while, and yet, given enough patience and enough time, they add up into something whole. And it's worth remembering, if you're still awake, still listening, still here with me, that Bansir and Kabi, the two tired old friends from the very beginning of the story, sitting on that low wall in the evening light, didn't become wealthy overnight either. Nothing at all in this book happens overnight. It happens the way most real, lasting things happen. Slowly, quietly, one small habit repeated until the repeating becomes a kind of second nature, almost without effort, and the second nature becomes, eventually, without anyone quite noticing the exact moment, a whole life. The book doesn't linger long on what became of Bansir and Kabi in the end, and it doesn't need to. You already know, in a quiet way, how their story goes because it's really an old, familiar shape. Two tired people willing simply to ask a question, and willing, afterward, to try something small and steady, again and again, long enough for it to matter. That's the whole story, really, underneath all the old names and the old city walls. Nothing more complicated than that. And Arkad himself, if you remember, started in exactly the same place. A young scribe, bent over clay tablets, earning barely enough to live on. Nothing about where a person starts seems to matter very much in this old story. What matters is only the small, steady thing they choose to keep doing, evening after evening, undramatically, until the years quietly turn it into something more. So there it is, an old city, built on the banks of a wide, slow river, and a handful of ordinary people in it, tired in the very same quiet ways we sometimes get tired, wondering if there might be a gentler, steadier way to hold their money than the way they'd always held it, and finding, in the end, that there was. Not a secret hidden away somewhere, not a trick or a clever shortcut, just a few small habits, returned to again and again, patiently, until they quietly became a life that felt a little more solid, a little more settled, a little more at ease. A tenth, set aside and simply left alone. A clear, honest eye on where the rest of it goes. Patience, letting what's saved grow slowly, in its own unhurried time. Care, taken quietly before any leap. A home to settle into and belong to, and a gentle kind of preparing for the years still ahead that haven't arrived yet and don't need worrying over tonight. None of it needs to happen tonight. None of it needs to happen tomorrow either, if tomorrow feels like too much. It's simply there, waiting, patient as an old city on a riverbank, the way it's been waiting quietly in these old pages for almost 100 years now. Ready whenever you happen to be ready, and there's no hurry about any of it at all. Not tonight. Not ever, really. If any of it stays with you at all, let it be just the smallest part. That a little, kept back quietly and regularly, tends, given enough time, to become a lot. Not through any effort you'd notice on any single day. Just through the slow, patient accumulation of ordinary days. One folded quietly into the next. The way this whole evening has folded quietly into rest, without your really noticing the moment it happened. You don't need to hold on to anything more than that tonight. Let the rest of it go, the way you'd let go of a held breath, slowly, without forcing it. The city is still there, and it will still be there tomorrow, and the coins in the story are still resting quietly in their purses, and none of it needs you right now. Somewhere, in that old, imagined city, the evening has fully settled in by now. The market stalls are closed and quiet. The camel trains have passed through the gates and found their rest for the night. Bansir has gone home to his own small house, and Kabi has set down his lyre after the noble's feast. And even Arkad, the richest man in all of Babylon, has finished his evening meal and gone to his own bed, the same as anyone else does, at the end of an ordinary day. Wealth, in the end, didn't spare him that small, universal thing, the simple need for rest, at the close of every day, the same rest that's waiting for you now. There's nothing grand happening anywhere in this story tonight. Just an old city, settling into darkness, the way any city settles into darkness. Just ordinary people resting after ordinary days the way you're resting now after your own. For now, there's nothing left at all to do. Nothing to solve, nothing to plan, nothing to figure out before you can rest. Just the quiet, settling in around you the way it settled over Babylon each evening, long ago. Just the dark and the stillness and whatever rest is waiting for you now, close at hand. If it helps, here they all are once more, very slowly, one last time, in case you'd like to drift off somewhere in the middle of them. A 10th, kept quietly aside. A clear, honest look at where the rest goes. Patience, letting what's saved grow slowly. Care before any leap. A home to settle into. And a gentle kind of preparing for whatever comes later. That's all of it. Small things, steady things. Nothing that needs to happen tonight, and nothing that can't wait until you're ready. The city is quiet now. The lamps along its walls have mostly burned down low. Somewhere out past the gates, the river keeps moving, the way it's moved for thousands of years, unhurried, going exactly where it's always gone, without needing to rush to get there. You can let go now whenever you're ready. There's nothing left to hold on to. If you'd like, there's another one of these old, quiet stories waiting for you. Some other night, whenever you'd like it. No rush at all. It'll still be here. Sleep well, friend.